this is conversion. Second part is conversion. So we're just talking about metric to metric conversion. And for metric to metric conversion, the good thing is that they have common. If you can see, the base unit would be the same. So the SI unit for energy is given in joule. But if you want to express a smaller value of the energy or a bigger value of the energy, we use prefixes. And prefixes means uh, a certain multiplier. So the good thing about the SI unit also is that they are just in a multiples of 10. So if you go up or go down, it's either multiplied by 10 or divided by 10. Okay. So for conversion of units, it's always good to have a follow this diagram. That what you have, you're gonna multiply it with your conversion factor, wherein the one would be on top, and then the bottom part would be what you have. Okay, and again, this one here is what you call the conversion factor. Where would you get your conversion factor? Well, usually from the uh, table of values, or in this case, the prefix. Okay, so that is just the conversion factor is just the same thing as, let's say, you would say 1 foot is 12 inches. So for every foot there would be 12 inches. So that would be your conversion factor. There's equivalent. So 1 foot is equivalent to 12 inches. Or if you say 100 centimeters is 1 meter, so that would be your conversion factor. However, in this case, we'll just make use of your prefixes. Okay, no need to memorize the different prefixes. I will actually give you that in the test also. So all you need to do is know how to use them. So let's say 311 microjoule. So how many would that be in joules? So, well, if I'm gonna follow this diagram here, so I'm gonna start with what I have. So I'm gonna write that one down, 311 microjoule, and then I'm gonna multiply that to my conversion factor. So I'm gonna check first if do I have a conversion factor that will directly give me joule. Well, again, if you can see, the bottom is the unit that I have. So that's micro. Generally, I have here microjoule. Again, I'm gonna do that because, again, I'm gonna write the unit, the same unit of the unit that I have. So it should be at the bottom. So if you can see here, microjoule and microjoule. If you have the unit with the prefix, you can always place 1. Okay, so 1 microjoule. So 1 microjoule. But what I want should be placed on top. So I'm gonna place the joule part on top. Okay. But what is the equivalence of 1 microjoule to joule? Well, this is where the prefix is useful. So you're just gonna place the multiplier. What does the prefix micro means? Micro means 10 to the power of -6. So therefore, essentially what I did here is just replacing my micro with the multiplier. Okay. So again, micro means, in this case, micro means 10 to the power of -6. So essentially what I did there is just replacing the symbol micro with the multiplier 10 to the power of 6. And if you can see there, I can cross out or cancel out microjoule. And what is left is the unit joule, which is what I want. So you can do that one in your calculator. The calculator should give you an answer of 3.11 times 10 to the power of -4 joules. Okay, so that would be the answer. Okay, and for letter B, you can see here, that's millisecond to kilosecond. Well, both contains the prefix milli and kilo, so both have prefixes. However, again, the nice thing about your metric to metric conversion is that they will have a common base unit. So that means that you just have second. Okay, so in a way, if you're gonna look at your conversion, you start with millisecond, but from millisecond you can convert it to second. That means millisecond to second, and then to kilosecond. So again, you don't have a direct conversion from millisecond to kilosecond. However, both can be expressed to second, because if you just take note of the multiplier from the prefix, you can convert it from millisecond to second and from second to kilosecond. So this would be your path. You can follow this path. Again, you can also use your own way, but I just find it this way, well, lesser prone to mistakes. Okay. Although if you have learned differently in the past in conversion, that's fine. But I will try to use the diagram that I've shown here. So what I have, 1 over half, and so on and so forth. Okay. So I'm gonna start with what I have. So always try to write it out. 5.50 times 10 to the power of negative 4. Again, my starting unit is millisecond. But you can see in my path, I need to convert this one first to second because I don't know the direct conversion from millisecond to kilosecond. Okay. So from the again from my conversion factor, I will write. So I started with milliseconds, so therefore the millisecond should be written at the bottom, and then second should be written on top. And as what I did in letter A, with your millisecond, I'm just gonna place 1. Okay, that means that I'm trying from my conversion factor, I'm trying to look for what's the value of 1 millisecond in terms of second. So that's what I'm gonna do. Well, just like what I did earlier, for the conversion of 1 millisecond to second, I'm just gonna replace my prefix milli by the multiplier. So if you're gonna look at your table, prefix table, or the diagram that was in your notes, milli means 10 to the power of negative 3. So that means that 1 millisecond is just 1 times 10 to the power of negative 3. So that's the equivalent. So if you can see here, all you need to know actually is the multiplier of your milli. And again, I will let you use that one during the test. So no need to memorize. But essentially, this gives you the conversion now from 1 millisecond to second. But my aim is kilosecond. So I will try to repeat the things that what I did previously. So, but now I'll be focusing that the unit that I have now is second. Okay. So that means that I'm gonna write second at the bottom. And is it not that I'm going to kilosecond? So kilosecond should be written on top. Okay. And just like before, with the prefix that I have, I'm gonna write the 1. So I'm just gonna get what is or how many seconds are there in 1 kilosecond. Well, just like what I did earlier, I'm just gonna replace to know the conversion. So replace your prefix kilo or k. You can find the symbol as well as the term, the prefix, and the multiplier for kilo is 10 to the power of 3. Okay, so that means that 1 kilosecond is just 1,000 seconds. And if I'm gonna multiply the 2, that would crush out the second because second over second is just equal to 1. Okay, so canceling again doesn't mean that it's gone, but the value of that is equal to 1. And if you can see, this will also check your final answer. Well, the final answer is in kilosecond, which is what you wanted. So you just multiply everything on top and divide it with whatever is in the bottom. So this should give you an answer of 5.50. Now make sure that you use the same number of sig figs. So if you can see, this is now kilosecond. And if you have noticed here, the numerical value is just actually, or the first part of my scientific notation for my final answer. If you can see, I'm just dealing with 550. So same thing with the original one. The one that changes is actually just the exponent. That is to be expected if you're just converting from metric to metric units. Okay. So again, if you can see from negative 4, it becomes negative 10. That is to be expected in metric to metric conversion. You're not changing the numerical part here, still 550. And take note to have the same number of sig figs, should be 5.50. You will not change it to 5.5, disregarding the 0. It should be the same, 5.0. Just like in the previous one, you have 3.11. Well, 311 has 3 sig figs also. So the final answer should also have 3 sig figs. And letter C, this should be instead of dm, this should be joule. Okay, because again, for a metric to metric conversion, you should expect that you have the same base unit. Okay, so you just use prefixes to express it as a smaller value or a bigger value. So I'm gonna employ the same thing. I'm gonna start with what I have, so that is 0.00087 joule, and I'm gonna multiply that with my conversion factor. But then again, my conversion factor is just from the prefix table. So I'm gonna use the multiplier of the different prefixes. So I started with joule, so that means that I will write my joule at the bottom, and in this case, directly, I'm just gonna use the I think this is DC joule. Okay. So again, just what I did earlier, I just gonna place 1 as the value for the conversion factor with the prefix. Okay, I always use 1 because what I'm gonna do is I make use of the multiplier of my prefix. So the equivalence of 1 DC joule. So I'm just gonna replace that DC with the value of my DC means what is the multiplier? Well, that's 10 to the power of -1. So if you can see, I'm just replacing my prefix with the multiplier. And if I'm gonna do that, again, I can cancel out the unit joule because joule over joule is just equal to 1. So what is left is essentially just DC joule, which is what I want. So if I'm gonna do that, this should give me an answer of 8.7 times 10 to the power of -3 DC joule. So you can see I'm dealing with the same number of significant figures in my final answer, as well as just the same, again, just the same digits there, 8 and 7. Essentially, what changes is just the placement or the exponent of my, yeah, this is just, again, the times 10 to the power of -3 tells me the place value of my number. Okay, that is to be expected for conversion of metric to, yeah, from one metric unit to higher or lower. Okay, because as I mentioned earlier, it's just designed in such a way that it is just a multiples of 10. Okay, multiples of 10. So letter D, you have centigram to milligram. So again, you're talking about masses here, but you're using prefixes to denote, again, certain value, a smaller value or a bigger value. Well, these are in the lower end or the smaller value part, centi and milli. Okay, this is the same thing as letter B. However, the good thing about this is that I know that both can be converted to gram. So from centigram to gram and converted to milligram. So that would be my path in converting this unit here. So I'm going to start with what I have. Again, what I have is 49,400 centigram. Again, I'm going to multiply that one with my conversion factor. But in my conversion factor, I'm going to place centigram at the bottom. Okay. And the value that I'm going to place there is always 1. And then on the top would be 2 gram. So that's what I'm going to do. Again, I don't have direct conversion from centigram to milligram. So I don't have that one. So that's why I need to go first to gram. And I'm just going to replace my centi with the multiplier. So to know the conversion from centigram to gram, I'm just going to replace the multiplier of centi. And centi is 10 to the power of -2. Okay. So again, no need to memorize this. You'll be given the table, or at least the diagram, the prefix diagram. Okay. So if you can see, I just replaced. So much easier to remember, especially if you're quite familiar with the different prefixes. So if I'm gonna do that, centigram will be cancelled out, or that means that centigram over centigram is just equal to 1. However, my aim is to get milligram. So therefore, I need to multiply it with another conversion factor. This time, the one that will convert from gram to milligram. So again, 1 milligram is how many grams? Well, again, I'm going to make use of the multiplier of milli to have that conversion. Milli means 10 to the power of -3. So I'm just going to replace my milli with 10 to the power of -3. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to multiply that one again, gram will be canceled out. And what is left is milligram. So if I'm going to multiply that, so just multiply everything in the numerator and divide whatever is in the denominator. Make sure that you know how to use your calculators, by the way, because these are 10 to the -3. You can express that one in scientific notation in your calculator. That if you're asking me how, well, different calculators have different way of expressing scientific notation. So you have to be, should be that you know how to use your calculator. Okay. So if I'm going to do that, this should give me an answer of 4.94. If you can see, I'm expressing them in 3 sig figs. So therefore, the final answer is also in 3 sig figs times 10 to the power of 5 milligram. Okay. So any questions so far? Well, this one here is just some sort of technique of converting things. If you have done it differently in the past, I'm fine with that as long as we should get the same answer. Okay. So again, this is just making use of our prefixes, because I know that in some cases, you know already that 1 kilo is 1,000, or 100 centi is one something. So 100 centimeters is 1 meter. But I just show you consistently. I'm using the same process. Sometimes it's better that way because maybe perhaps in some cases you'll get confused along the way. So might as well just focus on a single way of doing it. But then again, if you have another way, as long as you can explicitly show that one in your solution, that's fine with me. Just don't give me a number right away. Okay.